Everyone in the palace had a strategy for surviving Prince Raven. The kitchen staff timed their shifts around his movements. The senior knights developed a specific way of standing, shoulders back, eyes forward, nothing that could be read as challenge or weakness. The king's own council, men who had outlasted wars and purges and succession crises, rehearsed their sentences before entering any room he occupied. Because Prince Raven was not the kind of dangerous that announces itself. He was quiet, still. The kind of person who listened more than he spoke and remembered everything. At 19, the Alpha King's only heir already wore his reputation like armor. Cold, precise, capable of things people preferred not to name directly. No one knew exactly which stories about him were true, and no one was willing to find out. The rule was simple. Do not draw his attention. My name is Saren, Omega, 21. 3 weeks and 4 days into my post as a palace servant, which was exactly how long I managed to follow that rule. I cleaned, I mended, I moved through corridors like I was part of the architecture. In a palace built around hierarchy and power, invisibility was not a flaw for someone like me. It was the whole strategy. The head housekeeper had been direct on my first morning. Do not speak first, do not linger. And if he is in a room, find another room. I intended to follow that advice for the entirety of my employment. Then the supply cart was late. The head housekeeper was insistent, and I found myself in the east training yard replacing practice sand, while the most dangerous man in the kingdom ran sword drills 20 feet behind me. I kept my head down, focused on the work, one task, done quietly, and then gone. I was nearly finished when my foot caught the bucket edge. The fall happened in slow, humiliating detail. The bucket left my hands, sand went in every direction. I hit the stone floor on both knees and looked up to find Prince Raven standing directly in front of me, sword still raised mid-drill. Silver eyes focused on me with an expression that told me absolutely nothing about whether I was about to be dismissed or executed. Every coherent thought I had evacuated my body. That, I said, was not how that was supposed to go. The 2 guards at the yard gate stopped breathing. Raven looked at me for one long, unreadable moment. Then he laughed. Sudden, genuine, startled out of him, like a door he had forgotten existed, swung open without warning. Deep and real, and nothing like the controlled person everyone described. He stopped almost immediately, blinked slightly, like he had surprised himself. Then he looked back at me, still on the ground, and something in his face had quietly rearranged itself. "Are you hurt?" I stared at him. "You're asking about me. You fell hard. Your boots are covered in sand. I noticed." A pause. "Are you hurt?" I took stock. Knees bruised, pride in ruins. "No, Your Highness." He offered his hand. I took it. His grip was careful, like he was paying attention to the weight of the gesture, and he pulled me to my feet without effort. "Everyone talks about you like you're terrifying," I said, still not entirely in control of my own mouth. "You just asked if I was all right." Something moved behind his eyes. Not quite amusement. Not quite not. "Don't spread that around," he said. "I have a reputation." He walked back to his drills.
I fixed the sand with shaking hands and left.
After that, it was small things. So small I almost convinced myself I was imagining them. A quiet acknowledgement in passing. A question about a book I had been reading in the library. That turned into an hour-long conversation about governance and the difference between authority and fear. The way he listened. Not waiting for his turn to speak. Actually listening. Like my answers were data points he intended to keep. He laughed more than anyone knew. Not often, not easily. But when something caught him off guard, the laugh that came out of him was unguarded, in a way that felt like a secret. I started to understand that the silence everyone feared wasn't coldness, it was armor. You don't enjoy it, I told him once, in the garden, later in the evening than either of us had planned. The fear. Everyone thinks you do, but you don't.
He was quiet for long enough that I thought I'd miscalculated. No, he said finally. But fear keeps distance. Distance keeps people safe. Safe from what? He looked at his hands. From being worth something to me. The weight of that landed differently than I expected. Your mother? I said quietly. She trusted someone she shouldn't have. His voice was even, practiced. My father taught me that the lesson was to stop trusting. I think he was wrong, but I learned it anyway. What do you think the real lesson was? He looked at me. That grief is survivable. I just didn't know that yet. We stayed in the garden until the stars came out. We didn't talk about anything important after that. We didn't need to.
He told me he loved me on a Tuesday. No ceremony, no careful positioning. We were in the library. I was mending a split binding. He was reading something dense about territorial law. And he simply set his book down, turned to face me, and said it. I love you. I want to say that plainly before I think of 12 reasons not to. I set down the book. I have spent 8 years making sure nothing could reach me. It worked. And then you fell in the training yard.
And said something ridiculous. And I laughed, and something I had been holding shut opened up, and I haven't been able to close it. He held my gaze. I don't want to close it. My chest ached in a way that had nothing to do with pain. I've loved you, I said, since you asked if I was hurt, before you looked at your boots. The smile that crossed his face was nothing like the prince the kingdom feared. It was unhurried, unguarded, like a person who had forgotten what it felt like to want something and was learning the shape of it again. He was just Raven, warm, tired of being stone, choosing for the first time in years to let someone see it. They still fear him. In the war rooms and throne chambers, in the spaces where power gets decided, they should. He is formidable in ways that have nothing to do with me. But in the quiet parts of the palace, something changed. The prince laughs now, easily, genuinely, like someone who remembered that survival and living are not the same thing. And every wolf in the kingdom knows exactly what broke 8 years of silence. A bucket, a fall, and an Omega who forgot to be afraid. If you liked this story, subscribe.